There were voter education and registration drives. There were marches on the state capitol, and there were debates inside the capitol. There were calls for change through legal recourse.
On December 16, 1942, we brought Thurgood Marshall to Dillard University to meet with our executive council to help us organize our legal program. He recommended that we would retain, LEA would retain A.P. Turo, and he would come down and argue our early cases. And we used that formula until Turo died in 1972.
There were black demonstrations, white demonstrations. There were leadership declarations.
To condemn all Negroes and say, well, there are some that aren't too bright, so therefore we're not going to let any Negro in the institution because it's going to lower our standards. I'd say I've met an awful lot of white people who aren't too bright, and maybe we shouldn't admit them either.
Now, they're talking about first-class citizenship. The first thing is to act like first-class citizens.
The town had gone nuts, is the only way to describe it. They were talking about our Southern way of life, and they were talking about keeping black people in their place, and they were talking about white supremacy. It was an ugly town. It just got ugly.
This was the backdrop of American society and its struggle for social change. Change was called for, and change was needed. Leaders emerged to help negotiate the way from a social order of legalized racial segregation to court-ordered integration.
Attorney Stone became one of the stalwart leaders in challenging segregation laws in the courts. He had built quite a reputation in doing so. And it was the advent of the Civil Rights Movement. It was a time for change.
Jesse was not only a leader, but a very skilled negotiator. Jesse was not only a leader and a skilled negotiator, but a humanitarian. And I think oftentimes people miss that aspect of Jesse's contribution. Jesse was always about helping people.
He was able to get in with white folks and talk with them, and also the black leadership accepted him.
He would suit up, he would show up. He knew how to do things.
That confidence in him was so apparent that he was able to build bridges, and bridges without any strain on his personality.
Jesse N. Stone, a native of North Louisiana, was the first of 6 children born to Jesse N. Stone Sr., a school principal, and Ola Stone, a school teacher. He enrolled in the Southern University Law Center in 1946 after earning an undergraduate degree from Southern.
There were so few of us that we could ask all of the questions we wanted to ask, and we could stay as long as the professors would stay. So quite frequently a class would end, and an hour later we were still sitting there talking and asking questions of the professor or standing outside. And it was as though we all had, we were all being tutored, and we were.
He had so much practical wisdom, he had personality, he had oratorical ability, and he just was a charming young person, you know.
Stone became one of the first graduates of the law school and immediately set up a practice in Shreveport, Louisiana, with his law professor, Van U. LaCour, becoming the first black lawyer in 50 years in that city.
I wanted to take the people problems first, and the justice problems, and wanted to do things that enhanced opportunities for justice.
Attorney Jesse N. Stone, Jr. initiated most of the civil rights litigation in North Louisiana from 1950 to 1970. His life was threatened many times and his character tested as he endured a Jim Crow legal system. In his first experience in court, a bailiff refused to afford him the professional courtesy of proper seating in the courtroom.
It was a very devastating thing for me. I couldn't imagine a man walking up to a lawyer, telling a lawyer that he couldn't sit behind the rails. if the lawyer was in good stead with the Bar Association and so forth. So I said, are you gonna, you mean to tell me that you're not gonna allow me to sit behind the rail in this courtroom, and I'm a lawyer and I'm here in the interest of justice?
It took a short time for the news to get out throughout the legal community, and white judges and lawyers determined that the legal profession had to change and open its ranks in the name of ethics, professionalism, and justice.
After the day that I went to the courtroom in Shreveport and sat behind the rails, I went to virtually every courtroom in North Louisiana as my business carried me there, and sat down behind the rails, and it was I was always proud of the people who practice law in Shreveport and surrounding areas, and particularly in the courts in which I practice.
He was a good lawyer, but he was not one of these real aggressive lawyers. You know, you have lawyers so aggressive until it's kind of like refereeing a wrestling match when you judge. Well, he was not that kind.
Because he was a good lawyer, viewed as very competent, professional, and civil. He was successful in his first 5 criminal jury cases tried in North Louisiana. He soon earned the respect of the bar. For example, Attorney Stone represented a black man accused of killing a white man.
And that bothered him quite a bit, and I said, Jesse, you do have something to be worried about. I know what you're worried about, and you may not be able to do it, but you do it just like anybody else. Don't act like you understand his problem more than anybody else or anything else. You just represent him, and but you don't back off or anything you do for anybody else. And he did. He tried that case, and had a jury. The jury found him not guilty.
The first case to obtain voting rights for black residents in Bossier Parish netted him position and praise as a civil rights lawyer. In a short time, his association with noted civil rights attorney A.P. Turo of New Orleans and several high-profile cases dealing with public transportation, public facilities, and public schools cemented his role as a civil rights advocate. He won the trust, support, and admiration of grassroots civil rights activists throughout the community because he showed caring, respect, and good counsel.
When Brenda would get out of school and leave Byrd, Attorney Stone and Alphonse Jackson would come by and talk with her about the problems that she had at school, what happened or what was said. More or less, she was alone. He would come by often. He always told me if I had a problem or if Brenda had a problem, for her to call or for the pastor to call him.
He was such an inspiration to us, and you felt secure, and I felt when he was in the meetings or gave us directions that everything was going to be all right.
Jesse Stone had to be aware of the safety issues concerning those who fought with him for civil rights and whom he encouraged to take advantage of desegregation efforts in the earlier days, as well as his family.
There never was any fear shown. He was concerned about his family. In those kinds of situations, he would often have his family moved. He would have, Mrs. Stone and Michael and Shonda moved, but it was something about Dr. Stone. He typically wouldn't move himself. He would stay there. And that told me a lot about his courage. I mean, he did not want anyone to be able to intimidate him.
Well, Mr. Stone always told us to stay focused, and he realized that this was important to us, but it was also more important to obey the rules until you can get the rules changed.
I think Jesse's favorite phrase with all of us when we would have our strategy meetings that, look, we got to back up here and before we do anything else, think all around the coin, as he would say. He knew that there were still areas that we had to deal with.
Stone and other black leaders began to focus on ways of getting black people to register and vote and become involved in the political process. The Louisiana Education Association, under the leadership of his mentor, J.K. Haynes, through its Citizenship Education Committee, provided such a way. To motivate black residents to get involved in the political process, there was the formation of a political action group called the United Democratic Campaign Committee.
All of us were involved on a daily basis with each other for years. One night we're meeting talking about civil rights related activities, another moment we're talking about voter education projects, and another time we're talking about political campaigns. And so it was the way of life for over a decade.
Jesse used to say that, you know, unless we get somebody in the Louisiana legislature or in the Congress that owes us something, we're not going to be able to talk to them. We're not going to be able to get them to do things for our people.
Shreveport Police Commissioner George Doitois was a segregationist linked with harassment and police brutality against black civil rights activists. Doitois was a very controversial choice for endorsement by the United Democratic Campaign Committee, but he was an ambitious politician.
So we took advantage of his political ambition to curtail police brutality, to force him to hire black police officers, black sheriff deputies, and to generally provide an entree to city government for black people in Caddo Parish, and that was the trade-off. And of course, we knew he was going to win anyway.
One of the things Dr. Stone taught me, again at an early age, is support might not always be affirmation. Support might be the creation of an opportunity to have dialogue that you otherwise might not have.
Governor John McKithen was one such politician that sought Stone's support, received it, and later went on to make first steps towards inclusion of black residents in state government and other leadership opportunities. Governor McKithen created a biracial commission and selected Jesse Stone as assistant director to work alongside Director Jack Martzell.
There was a feeling that the commission was intended to blunt the civil rights movement, that the idea was to kind of keep the peace and that we were firemen. And indeed, that was one of the constant problems that Jesse raised all the time.
He was unselfish in his actions toward getting black people more participation. When other black leaders asked the governor to appoint Stone to a judgeship in Shreveport, Stone suggested better timing for the appointment of Israel Augustine in New Orleans.
He said, I think that the people would run you out of Louisiana if you appointed me as judgeship at Shreveport at this time. He said, why don't we give the judgeship to our friend down in New Orleans? What's his name? I said, Israel Augustine. And that's how Israel Augustine's judgeship came about.
Jesse felt that we had to be full participants in all of the democratic structures. But at the same time, he thought, or at least he conveyed to us, that we couldn't ever, he would say, you can't ever leave your base. And to me, that simply meant that there were trade-offs that were necessary for us to achieve equal educational opportunities. But there also were some things we had to hold on to if we were going to be successful.
Jesse Stone left for Baton Rouge as Dean of the Southern University School of Law from 1971 to 72.
The second part of my life has to do primarily with imparting knowledge, information, and developing leadership responsibility, and involve young people, guidance, so to speak.
He was a good mentor in showing me how to, work the political process. And that was good. It was great. It was beneficial for me.
The greatest challenge at that time was an explosion suddenly of enrollment that year came. And it was sort of open enrollment, and a lot of people showed up. And therefore we had to cut down on those things. We had to be selective. Before that, the problem was how to get students to law school. And certainly what happened that year was that we have too many people in the law school.
As dean of the law school, I think he very quickly established himself, though he wasn't here very long, largely because once he came to Baton Rouge, others could see what sort of assets and talents that he had, and desired to have those talents serve a larger arena. And so it was during the administration of Louis Michaud, who was then State Superintendent of Education, that offered Jesse Stone an opportunity to come and serve as Assistant State Superintendent of Education, which he did.
In this new role, Jesse Stone again helped to expand job opportunities for black people in state government, this time in the Department of Education.
There wasn't a minority in any official position in the whole Department of Education, which had 1,200 employees. And of course, we changed that. Jesse was the first appointment, and then there were many after him in other positions in the department. He did a good job administering the community affairs as assistant superintendent in the department, and everybody liked it. And he made a good presentation. He often made presentations before the State Board of Education for our department.
The Louisiana Constitutional Convention of 1973 addressed higher education governance, with provisions to have a separate system for LSU and another system for other state colleges and universities. Others strongly felt that Southern University deserved an opportunity to have a system and to have its campus system so recognized and acknowledged in the state constitution. And so it was a part of the deliberations of that body that the Southern University system be created and governed by the Southern University Board of Supervisors. In 1974, Jesse N. Stone, Jr. became president of the Southern University System, a public system of higher education consisting of 3 institutions with a combined enrollment of more than 12,000 students. It employed more than 600 professionals and approximately 1,000 classified and unclassified personnel. In his inauguration address, Jesse Stone called Southern a vital and indispensable black institution and called for financial and moral support of higher education. His tenure was filled with challenges and change.
When we were involved in the first lawsuits at desegregation, it was he playing the role both as president and lawyer, which really shaped the first consent decree. And that consent decree was a cornerstone of change.
I think we all owe Dr. Stone a great deal of gratitude for Southern University's presence. I mean, for what it stands for today, for what it's about today, for its physical facility. A lot of those dollars came out of the consent decree. And it's because of Dr. Stone's compassionate plea with the legislature and with the courts.
He knew that this school needed to be preserved, because if the school is not preserved, we will not have good crop of lawyers coming to the community, in the community, to serve the cause of civil rights, the people who need legal services.
He had a lot of knowledge about the system as a whole. He understood how politics worked, something that a lot of people couldn't maintain. They didn't understand the context. It was all limited goals that they had. He could see down the road, and was able to pull it together with support from all areas of the community.
He had the challenge of bringing the students as well as his faculty and staff into a new way of thinking.
Everyone knows we stand in constant need of knowledge if we're going to make things happen, and if we're going to not only enlarge freedom and opportunities, but if we're going to preserve freedom and opportunities, we have to do these things.
I didn't get my history till I got up here to Southern University, and I wasn't really exposed to it until he and I started talking. Benjamin Mays, I had never even heard of who this man was, and I'm somewhat embarrassed to say that, but he told me who Benjamin Mays was, and I had the opportunity to see all type of pictures and things like that. And then I started inquiring more and more as it relates to history and why black folks are where they are.
Dr. Stone was very compassionate when he would call general assemblies. He would say, you know, his motto was striving towards a larger margin of excellence. And he meant that.
In 1980, Jesse Stone was appointed by Governor John McKithen to serve as Associate Justice pro tempore on the Louisiana State Supreme Court. He helped draft more than 100 opinions and authored several of his own while serving the court.
It's not very often that people get to be on the Supreme Court, regardless of their backgrounds. It's a very select group. He made that group. Students, through opportunities he helped create, are judges at different levels. So, one of them sat ad hoc on the Louisiana Supreme Court. They're lawyers, they're district attorneys. There's so many different choices that are out there that it's just a pleasure seeing his legacy.
He joined the Southern University Board of Supervisors in 1991 and served until 1996.
He got back on that board so that he can have an input with the governor's office and the administrators up here to make sure that Southern University currently exists so that many African Americans and white kids can both come to school here and matriculate and get their education.
I do feel that if you have opportunities to do things, and if you have the capacity to help to make things better, I think you have the obligation, the biblical obligation to do it. And I'm not a scholar, biblical scholar and things of this sort, but somewhere it's written in the Bible that to whom much is given of him, much is required.
Throughout Jesse's career, when he would go in to meet with anybody, you never heard him say, I'm president of Southern, I'm attorney. He would say, I'm Jesse Stone. And I think that attitude went a long ways to make people have confidence in him.
When he lived on campus, there was a lot of memories for his inviting family, friends, and guests. I think he kind of had an open door policy. Anybody could drop in at any time, talk with him. Wasn't no, had to come on a special occasion or get asking for a visit, or you just drop in on him.
The real nurturing parts of being with Jesse, and one of the things that I'm sure that Paul appreciated, because he said it more than one time, had it not been for Jesse, you know, I would have had to start this practice on my own. We didn't have any money to start a practice with, and so going in with having someone to go into practice with was just a real jewel at that time.
He represented over the years leadership capacities in all levels.
The dismantling of that segregated society was a true challenge for Jesse Stone, because Jesse did not see black folks or poor folks or any folks in Louisiana being able to make progress in Louisiana till we dismantled that segregated society. So that was one of his leading objectives in terms of the purpose in his life.
There's a time when we needed somebody, he was there.